It's the Year of the Garden, and where better to celebrate than Victoria, BC, the city of gardens.
Recorded on the traditional territories of the Lekwungen and Wasanich nations, this series examines local history, culture, and ecology over a nice cup of tea.
So put the kettle on and join us.
Welcome to Tea and Gardens.
Today we're at Government House, which is the official residence of the Lieutenant Governor of British Columbia. The 36 acres of grounds include formal gardens, native woodlands, and heritage buildings.
We've come to learn about the gardens, and we are also delighted to be invited for tea in the Royal Suite. So, let's get started.
The many gardens of Government House are maintained by a volunteer organisation called Friends of Government House. We met with member Janet Renouf in the vast Garry Oak woodland to hear how the community got involved with these grounds.
It was the end of the 80s, and the Queen and Prince Philip were here on an official visit and staying here, and Prince Philip went out for an early morning walk around the gardens and down through the woodlands and came back and said to Dr. David Lamb, who was then the LG, Lieutenant Governor, that really he should do something about getting a volunteer group together to restore the woodlands and the gardens. And David Lamb began working with George Radford and two other people who are well known in horticultural circles, and they set up the Friends. So the restoration and, well, actually the invasive species removal started in the woodlands in summer of 90 and continued through 91. And the Friends group was started in 1992. There were some people who came and worked on the upper gardens as well for those before the Friends started. They had to double dig the Rockland 1 and Rockland 2, the borders up above, because the soil was so hard they could not just get a fork into it. It was really, had not been tended for quite a long time, and it needed a lot of work. So the woodlands restoration has been ongoing since then, so we're still battling a bit of broom, less these days, and ivy and the Himalayan blackberry and purple oyster weed and various other baddies.
So the restoration of the woodland is the specific reason that Friends of Government House began?
I would say so, yes. I mean, there was also an emphasis on restoring the upper gardens to bring the public in, but the woodlands was the main focus initially, yes.
So these woodlands are Garry Oak ecosystem, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
So they're very environmentally significant to Victoria?
Definitely, yes. And we have a couple of red-listed plants and a number of blue-listed. So you know what red-listed?
No, I was just about to ask.
Okay. So red-listed is in danger of being totally wiped out. And some of them are red-listed just in BC, so they're okay in other locations in the world. But there are some things that we have that do not occur anywhere else in the world.
Since you've done this restoration, have you seen a change in diversity? Is there more biodiversity here now?
Certainly in the areas where we've removed things like hairy cat's ears, that's another plant. It looks a bit like a dandelion, a tall stalk with a yellow flower at the top, and basil leaves that are right on the ground. And they outcompete, they take away the sunshine and the rain from some of the bulbs. So some of the bulbs are really tiny, like they're no bigger than half of my fingernail. And they can withstand drought and, extreme environmental conditions, but they can't tolerate being completely cut off as these basil leaves do. for them. So we've noticed where we've removed the hairy cats on the eastern oat crops, for instance, that we're getting a lot more of these, blue-eyed grass and monkey flower and other plants that, are very, very tiny, resilient, but they can't outcompete these great hairy leaves that lie flat on the ground. So this lookout was the idea and a project of Iona Campanola when she was Lieutenant Governor, and it was opened in 2004, as you can see on the stonework. And at that point, the woodlands were not open to the public. You could go through on a guided tour a couple of times a year. You had to pay $10 for the tour, and the public were not allowed down below at all. And she thought that this would be a wonderful spot for people to survey the woodlands. And so there are 4 plaques here with a lot of information about what people were looking at. And a couple of years after that, the woodlands were open to the public. The trail was open.
From the woodlands, we wandered up to the terraces that are nestled at the back of the house and have a spectacular view of the Olympic Mountains.
How long have you been volunteering here?
Since about 2005, I think.
Wow, so a big stretch.
Mm-hmm.
What is it about it that draws you to this work?
Initially, I signed up because I wanted to learn about native plants. I bought a property that had some, and I didn't know anything about them. And I figured this was a good place to learn. And it has been. I have learned so much and made so many connections with people who are knowledgeable and willing to share their knowledge. So, yeah.
So what are we looking at now? What could you point out to us?
Well, we're in the terraces, and the deer has just gone up the rocks there to see if can find something to eat.
Are they problematic in the garden?
Oh, they eat everything. Just when you think, oh, they won't eat that, they turn around and eat that. So one time a friend asked what a spring flower bulb she could plant that the deer wouldn't eat, and very confidently I said, daffodils. They won't eat daffodils. All parts of the daffodils are poisonous. And the next spring she phoned me up and she said, Janet, they've eaten the daffodils.
Got to update your records. So we were recently told that for the most part, deer don't eat native plants. Is there any truth in that?
Not that I've seen, no. We've had to cage the Gary oaks that we've planted, and we can't remove the cages until they're really quite big. And they've been eating the blooms off the camas. There's a camas field down below that was one of the best fields on the property, and they started one year eating just the flowers, and subsequent years they started going down to the leaves. They were eating to the point where they were just leaving about 2 or 3 inches, 5 centimeters or 10 centimeters above the ground, and I thought that the camas would die. They have come back and they're not eating as much, but the only thing they don't eat is something that has prickles.
On the way to the vegetable garden, we had one last stop with Janet in the lush rhododendron garden.
So this is called the East Lawn Garden, or there are a lot of rhodos, but there are very old Douglas firs, and the Douglas firs are suffering with the current changes in climate. They're not getting enough water in the winter, and these are looking pretty healthy, but in general the Douglas fir forest is highly stressed the last few years.
And there are rhododendrons growing here.
Yes.
Do they grow well together? Is there a relationship?
They are both, acid-loving plants, so they seem to do very well together here. And they're spectacular.
The vegetable garden volunteers were busy working on a sunny day. Mary Cake was kind enough to take a break and tell us about their work.
How long have you been volunteering here?
15 years.
Wow.
Not in the vegetable garden, but the vegetable garden got underway in about 2009, 2010. So I took it on in about 2011. I didn't start it. There were 3 other people who got it going. They managed in this first quadrant, which used to be the whole area for bedding plants that the nursery garden used to grow out for stock to propagate on. And then once a year, there was a huge plant sale here at Government House. It took about 20 or to 40 volunteers to manage it, and it finally just ran out of steam. And so now things have changed, and we have a nursery garden there that now sells to the public, kind of on the almost 6 months of the year. So it's a different format. And we have gained 2 more quadrants, and so now we harvest more than 3,000 pounds of vegetables a season, and we extend the season from March into October to the end of October, so we grow 6 months. And I grow 25 different vegetables and about 63 different varieties, and we turn these beds over 50 times in a season, all totaled. Yeah, so we're growing carrots and beets, salad mix. We offer salad mix to the tea room, and we grow garnish flowers, edible flowers for them for their meals. And like that. It's
What
fun.
happens to the rest of the vegetables?
We sell it to the volunteers on site because there could be as many as 200 volunteers in the other gardens, because this is 36 acres and 22 gardens, I think. And so we have sales on the days that we're here, which are just Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we harvest and then sell what we're offering. And we also send at least 300 pounds of produce to charity to help with the community food security. So
it's
yeah.
pretty self-sustaining then.
It is, and it's kind of a closed loop because the friends give me a budget by which I buy the seed and the soil mixes, or not soil mix so much as compost, and plant it. And then we all consider this a perk to our members for volunteering, because it's all organic. It's picked this morning, and they get it within 3 hours out of the ground, and can't get fresher. So people seem to appreciate it very much. And right now we're harvesting salad mix, head lettuce, spinach, and some gorgeous radishes. So next is coming up sugar snap peas, summer squashes going in, and pole beans and cucumbers. So we're getting underway. There's the children's garden behind you. It's sponsored by Government House, and the organization that's started it and managing it is Growing Young Farmers. And they're a nonprofit, so children's groups walk here, I think probably up from the James Douglas or other schools that are in the neighborhood, and come and garden once or twice a week with them. They put down basically cardboard, leaf mulch, and wood chips, made soil out of it, and they even have growing trees. And that's just on concrete rubble below it.
That's amazing.
It is.
Wow.
And it's just so healthy.
And how do the children react to gardening?
They love it. They have such a great time. All they want to do is plant something.
Just put their hands in the dirt.
Yeah, they love it. It's just, they've done a great job. And they're all age groups. They start with the little ones, like 5 and 6-year-olds, all the way up to the 12-year-olds.
Do they get to return to harvest what they've planted?
Usually. And Debbie can, if school is close to being out and they won't be back, usually things like salad mix and strawberries are ready, so she'll take it to the school and have a salad with them so they can have that full circle of what they've planted.
We saw a deer walking through the grounds earlier.
Yes.
Do you have trouble with deer jumping in and
No,
nibbling? No?
although there's been people that have neglected to close gates, and then we've had them, which makes me grind my teeth. But we're the only fenced area, and so we feel quite. We just don't have the same problems as long as people close the gates.
So what does it mean to you to grow food in this garden?
Oh, it's everything. I love it. I'm a retired organic farmer from California. And what I love about being able to do this, of course, everybody is so receptive. First of all, our audience is just so appreciative. And I don't have to make a living doing this. I'm retired. And farming, there was always a constant worry of income, because that's farming. And here I get to enjoy what I love doing the most. And I get a budget. And I'm expected just to grow vegetables. But that's it. So it's great joy. And then socializing is wonderful. I have 20 volunteers that work in the garden, and I seem to get the credit for all the work that goes on here. But I tell people, I'm just say where to plant it, but I'm not, they're doing the work. And that's why it looks so beautiful, is with their hard efforts and hard work.
Thank you to Janet and Mary for taking the time to speak with us. Next, we made our way inside the house to have tea with Jeremy Brownridge.
As we were guided through the home, we were given a tour that included the ballroom. It features the Millennium windows, which represent 18 different plant species found in British Columbia. After admiring the art and architecture, we went up for tea.
My name's Jeremy Brownridge. I'm Private Secretary to the Lieutenant Governor of British Columbia and Executive Director here at Government House.
How long have you had that job?
I've had this job for just about 7 years, but I've worked in this office for 14 years.
What does that job look like day to day?
Day to day, well, today my job involves me speaking with you, which is an absolute delight. Thank you for coming today. Just moments ago, I was sort of stick handling a Bollywood film production that's taking place here today. Yesterday, for instance, I emceed a event. It was actually a donor's tea, we call it, an event to thank Victoria Foundation supporters. I do, of course, work a lot supporting the Lieutenant Governor, making sure she's in the right place at the right time, sifting through the many, many event requests that we get, helping her render orders in council and constitutional duties. So I'm delighted to say that my job duties are many and varied. Keeps it interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Could you tell us where we are right now?
We are actually in a place that we don't often come. We are in the Government House Royal Suite in their private dining area.
That's very exciting. We feel very privileged to be here.
I very rarely sit here.
Yeah. So what is the significance of tea service to Government House?
Tea service, I think it means a lot. It conjures up a lot of different things for a lot of different people. For us, it could mean let's have tea, means come have a meeting. Her Honor being sort of the apolitical convener and host, in many cases, might invite folks over for tea, which is really just a conversation. Could be a meeting, could be a point where Her Honor's listening to issues or certain things that people may wish to relate to her in the province. Tea could be an event, as I was saying yesterday. We called it Donor Recognition Tea. So the event itself is a tea. We would serve tea. So it has many, many different meanings to us. I like the fact that tea can kind of bridge cultural gaps even. Her Honor very often hosts diplomatic calls. That's members, I think there's 88 consuls general in British Columbia, and then visiting ambassadors from various countries. One thing that everybody seems to appreciate is a cup of tea. And maybe not everyone loves a glass of wine or a cup of coffee, but it seems culturally tea is something that's shared around the world. So that's a few definitions of tea for me.
That's really nice. I like that unity aspect of it.
Exactly.
So Victoria has a very strong tea culture. We can see that through the whole city. Why do you think that is?
I think a few years ago we could more directly relate it to sort of the more near history of British influence here in Victoria. In that way, the reluctant to get into too much of the colonial history, but it's there. And I mean, in terms of a province, British Columbia is one of the newer ones in having been arrived at by settlers from the UK and various other parts of Europe. So I think here you'll find more first and second generation Brits than you might find in other parts of the country. So there is certainly that tie there. I think, though, in more recent years that tea has grown beyond what we might consider just having a high tea or a British tea or a cuppa to include things like bubble tea. I've seen other Asian influenced tea shops serving matcha. I think other areas of Central Asia as well are well represented in here. So I think tea has very recently evolved, and I'm delighted to see that, and it's very much more representative of British Columbia's current culture.
Yeah, I agree. We've been noticing that throughout this series,
Yeah.
that it has this peg as like a British thing. It's really not. It's,
really
like
not, yeah.
really
It's
quite
really-
universal.
Yeah, absolutely. I've even seen, I think there was a Syrian grocery store where, folks out front sipping on some tea. So it's really, really evolving here in Victoria.
Nice. Would you like to pour us some tea?
May I offer you a cup of tea?
Oh, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
To add this to your job description.
Right.
Oh, it's well entrenched in my job description. Mm-hmm. Oh, we've even steeped it an appropriate amount of time. May I offer you a cup of tea as well?
Yes, please.
Okay. There you go.
Thank you.
This is a pretty cool way to provide sugar.
Yeah.
It's natural sugar on a disposable stick, so we're not creating any waste, and we're not creating more hands on a sugar jar.
It's really beautiful too.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Wherever possible and seasonally available, we love to make arrangements using flowers from the property. And those arrangements would actually be made by our volunteer flower arrangers, the amazing crew that help with all sorts of decorations and floral arrangements for all kinds of events. Another cool thing is we have on-site bees. So the bees visit all the flowers, wild and otherwise, here on the property and produce honey right here on site, again managed by a wonderful crew of volunteers. So on occasion we'll have honey accompany the tea, and particularly our diplomatic visitors love that.
Yeah, I bet. That's really special.
Yeah.
Could you tell us who else might have had tea in this room or in Government House in general?
And it might be a national secret, but I think in this space, since this is the guest suite for visitors, members of the Canadian royal family, other heads of state, other royalty from around the world, so I could think most recently would be the Governor General. I can say that the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge quite recently stayed with us and would have sat at this table. Other members of the royal family, the Earl and Countess of Wessex, and at one point the Queen would have actually sat in this room. I believe she stayed with us 5 times during her reign. Regrettably, I haven't been here for any of those. The last visit, I believe, was the Golden Jubilee in 2002. But I'm not sure if it was this chair, but she would very likely have taken tea in this room.
So there's clearly a very, very strong component of volunteerism at Government House Gardens.
Absolutely.
Is that unique to this Government House?
It is. I'm pleased to say we're a little bit the envy of my counterparts throughout Canada. We are very much blessed with the weather, but we're even more blessed with, I'd say, around 250 active volunteer gardeners who give so much of themselves for the upkeep and maintenance of this beautiful 36-acre estate. So if you come here on a Tuesday or a Thursday, you can see literally hundreds of folks with their fingers in the soil, bringing life to this beautiful estate.
Thank you so much to the Friends of Government House Garden Society, Jeremy Brownridge, and the entire team at Government House.
Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.